Gianni. I'm Alexander Surya Gianni. It is 10:44 a.m. October 31st. I don't know how many times I got to say this, but any form of intimidating, coercing civilian populations, terrorism, threat bets to intimidate and coerce a civilian population, terrorism, threat bets to use intimidation and coercion through threat bets in order to influence the policy of a government, terrorism. Their demonstrations to intimidate and coerce civilian populations, terrorism. Their demonstrations for using intimidation and coercion to influence the policy of a government, terrorism. Threatening with the data nightmare or creating a data nightmare through manufactured data to use intimidation and coercion to influence the policy of a government, terrorism. I just said this out loud. Threatening people with their technology is intimidating, coercing a civilian population, threatening the government with their tech. And using intimidation and coercion to influence the policy of the government is terrorism. How are terrorists not in prison? Who are the people who know who these guys are? And who are the culpable parties not reporting these people? And like I said, if you think you're implanted, there is a thing called spectrophotometry. And there's certain imaging that capitalizes off the techniques in spectroscopy and spectrophotometry. And you can basically, get light fired, and they can look at the absorption spectrum of the light and identify if you've been implanted. Neurons, basically, without anything in them other than just, ions and cytosol, etc., will have a different absorption spectrum than, neurons that have been implanted. They'll absorb light differently, and that's one way they can also potentially identify the chemicals that these devices are made of and identify devices in your brain and your peripheral nervous system, spine, what have you. So central and peripheral, and even in your body. So if you think you're implanted, you can get spectrophotometry. There's a certain MRIs and certain imaging that capitalizes off of spectrophotometry. So that's one way to catch these terrorists and these scum, implanting people around the world and trying to rape mankind of their free will. But I've heard said this. It's already in some documents. But also, it is detectable. These guys are full of shit. And like I said, they can potentially, if you know any people who are implanted or not and they passed away, you can do probably chemical tests on the flesh and also use intense magnification probably and get a pathologist to find these devices. If it doesn't show up on magnification, you can probably do chemical testing, and if there's chemicals that show up in the flesh that aren't supposed to be found in neurons, you can probably identify what it is. Especially if they're in various places, and then you can match it up with their bedding ring and their experiment rings and see what the experiments they were doing and be like, oh, they said they're doing an experiment on the frontal lobe. Let's look at the frontal lobe. Oh, look, here's some weird chemicals. These are probably the devices they're putting in people's brains and bodies via implantation. But, these guys are terrorists. Our terrorists not in prison. This is infuriating now. I'm getting fed up with being held hostage, and I'm getting fed up with these guys committing crimes daily. And people just ignoring it. I'm fed up with people who abuse human life for entertainment, not in prison. I'm fed up with people who murder autistic people and try to murder disabled people for entertainment, not in prison. I'm fed up with people who murder children for entertainment for COVID bets and murder mothers, fathers, and grandfathers for entertainment with their COVID bets, not in prison. I'm fed up with guys who fire WMDs at disabled people for entertainment and then make up lies to justify it, not in prison. I'm fed up with guys involved with the break the barrier bet where they try to fire radiation weapons through 5 feet of metal at someone's head and make it look like an accident, not in prison. So what the hell's going on around here?